Hi all. The next topic here is Towards a Feminist Poetics, written by Showalter. Elaine Showalter, that is her full name. She's an American literary critic, a feminist, and a writer on cultural and social issues. Okay, so directly we can get into the topic Toward a Feminist Poetics. So, Elaine Showalter's feminist criticism is a clearly articulated feminist literary theory. Okay, so Showalter has proposed a separate and independent model of feminist literary theory by rejecting the inevitability of male models and theories and by recalling the history of women's writing to the present. Really, she divides her female model into two types. According to Showalter, there are two types of female model is there. First one is feminist critique. Okay, feminist critique exposing a woman as a reader, and the second one is gynocritics presenting woman as a writer. Woman as a reader and woman as a writer. Okay, so she is more inclined to gynocritics in order to develop a literature of their own. Gynocritics means presenting women as a writer. So the feminist critique as a sort of feminist criticism envisions the women as the readers of those male produced texts. So the feminists thus try to trace out the images and stereotype of the women exposed in the male texts. This is also called traditional feminist criticism, where women are the consumers of the production in literary writing. Women is presented only as the reader of the male's works. So on the contrary, coming to gynocritics is such a phase of feminist criticism in which women becomes writers. Women becomes writers with women as the producer of textual meaning with the history, themes, different genres and structures of literature by women. So this is in true sense the female model of writing, being independent of male values and norms. It reflects the position and importance of women's writing in the literary history. So in this way, gynocritics deliberately try to avoid the inevitability of male models and theories and seeks a purely female model. She takes a departure from the assumption by saying that women are different in terms of nature, race, color, and nation. Thus, they cannot be universally studied. She claims that, like the male writers, female writers too have their own tradition. She says that women's writings in the past was overlooked and undervalued by male critics. To make the literature of women different and special, there is a need of the reconstruction of its past and rediscovery of the scores of women writers, she says. So as a result, she has reconstructed the past of literary history of women by dividing the three stages of women writers. Okay, so coming to the feminine phase, as far as Showalter is concerned, the feminine phase is from 1840 to 1880, where the women writers such as Bronte sisters, George Eliot, and Elizabeth Gaskell, so all these women writers belong to this phase, which covers the period of 1840 to 1880. So the writers followed male's norms, internalizing the dominant male aesthetic standards. They identified themselves with the male culture as women were not allowed to write. Some of them even wrote in male pseudonyms. Got it? So their works dealt with social and domestic background. They, however, exhibited a kind of sense of guilt in their writing because they felt that they are doing something they were not supposed to do. They accepted certain limitations in their writings. Okay, so the next feminist phase that she refers is 1880 to 1920. That is the second phase. This phase covers the duration of 1880 to 1920, including the writing like Elizabeth and Robbins, Francis Trollope, and others. So the women writers of this phase protested against the male canons and values. So it is the period of separatist utopia, I must say. So they rejected any text that stereotyped the women. They developed a personal sense of injustice and wrought bias of male. The bias shown by the male. And the next female phase is 1920 to the present. The writers such as Rebecca West, Catherine Mansfield, and Dorothy Richardson of the period between 1920 to the present day came under this phase. So the writers of this phase avoid both imitation of the feminine writers and the protest of the feminist writers. They purely develop the idea of female writing and female experience. They give predominance to female writings and their experience only. They differentiate female writing and male writing in terms of language. Their effort to identify and analyze female experience leads them to this phase of self-discovery. So thus, Showalter's attempt is noteworthy in a sense that she wants to free women from the male dominated literary tradition. For this, she rejects the heliocentric language and calls for the women's access to language so that women can develop a cultural model of their own writing to express and interpret women's experiences distinctly and authentically. That's all about Showalter's towards a feminist poetics. Thank you.